additional opportunity to um, put more into the neighborhood first plans. I want to make sure that, so if looking at what we have here, if we need to amend the recommendation number 2 to include that, then that's I want to make sure I'm proper and in order. That's what's going to happen.
We could take that direction from you. We brought the fiscal year 22 through 26 capital budget to you for that very feedback.
Okay.
We'll bring back that revised capital budget for as a proposed capital
Okay.
budget on the 7th, and we'll make sure that we identify a section in there that answers the questions that you have and addresses neighborhood.
Well, if it's in order, I'll go ahead and make the motion because I want to make sure I state it like a minute. So I offer the motion that we accept the fiscal year 21 second quarter budget update as presented, and that we approve budget amendments as included in the update to also include an additional amendment to the neighborhood first allocation.
I would second that, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Motion's on the table and seconded. Let's open it up for discussion. Are you finished?
I'm
Commissioner?
finished.
Okay.
Yeah,
Commissioner Richardson.
I just wanted to emphasize, Robert, you mentioned it and had not mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but it was, of course, something we agreed on, that our millage rate would be maintained at the 4.1. So what that means is there will not be a property tax increase included in this. I want to emphasize that there will not be, because we've already agreed that we will maintain our millage rate at 4.1. I would also, Mr. Mayor, like to also agree with the Mayor Pro Tem in terms of what we provide for our employees. I would suggest that we do at least 3% if we can't do the 6%. If we can do the 6%, fine. I'm in agreement with that, but at least the 3% for this next fiscal year. But if we can get to the 6% and still balance our budget, I'm all for that as well. I think our employees deserve that. They've done a yeoman's job to continue the quality of level and quality of services that they've done throughout this pandemic and hurricanes before that, and deserve that kind of support from us and from staff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a clarifying question to the amendment that Commissioner Williams-Cox brought up. The item number 2, the budget amendments, my understanding is those were the fiscal year 21 budget amendments. Okay, and then what we're discussing about the Neighborhood First funding, that's for fiscal year 22 through 26 capital improvement plan?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not approving the fiscal year 22 to 26 capital improvement plan funding
Not in
today?
its
We're
entirety.
just, okay,
Addressing the neighborhood
okay,
first
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a follow-up to that, because I think we want to be forward-looking. You know, I've met with Griffin Heights, and I know they have great plans for their neighborhoods and some other neighborhoods. And I think it would be beneficial when we come back to see how many neighborhood plans we're working on, as you said, and then allocate the dollar amounts going forward. But I agree with the motion, and I'd like to see more investment in these neighborhood plans, because we see a small project can eat up that budget very quickly, and I think in some of these neighborhoods we're really trying to be transformational. So I appreciate the motion and look forward to supporting it.
Excellent. Any further comment? Seeing none, the motion on the table made by Commissioner Williams-Cox is for staff recommendation of number 1 and number 2 as amended, seconded by Commissioner Richardson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr.
Commissioner Matlow.
And before we move on from the budget amendment conversation, there were 2 projects that we just approved. Just lost my notes. One was there was an undesignated sales tax 2020 fund for the golf club bathrooms. Do you know the balance of that fund?
Do you know that?
I don't offhand know. We have,
We've got our capital budget person, Cody, and I'll ask him to send me that.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And then the Second Amendment said it was coming from the undesignated capital projects fund, I believe, and the balance of those as well. And I bring those two amendments up, just curious of what's in those funds. And at our last couple CRA meetings, it has been expressed that the CRA board would like the city to consider $1 million allocation to the Ashmore's project. And I know it was discussed of whether that would have to impact affordable housing, and we're seeing amendments today coming out of undesignated funds altogether. So I think it would be very beneficial for us to know what pots of money there are and what's undesignated. And I think we have the full support that the city would like to move forward with that project. So I'd like to make a motion that we identify $1 million in funding for the Ashmore's renovation.
Motion on the table for $1 million out of,
I'll leave it to the city manager's discretion to identify the accounts and funds, but just as a policy direction to go ahead and identify the money we would use for, to complete that project.
is this for this fiscal year or for a future fiscal year?
Mr. City Manager, what do you anticipate being the timeline of doing the work to figure out what we actually need to do inside that building, engaging with the neighborhoods? I know Commissioner Williams-Cox has taken the lead on this, so I'll defer to y'all on the timeline and how it wants to play out. I just want to make sure we're dedicating the funds to do it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Okay, this is a long story, but I'll make it short. The reason that the Ashmore project was an attraction was because there were some available dollars out there from 3 years ago that were customized for how they needed to be used. So that was the reason for the Ashmore project even coming forward, because of the TDT dollars, extra dollars, if we might say. Now, I don't know if we have extra dollars in the city budget. That, the city manager would have to let us know that. But if there are, then it's not a matter, the $1 million was not a magical number. It was just what was available. So I have no idea, I don't know if anyone has any idea what it would take to transform that building, but it was attractive because it's a city-owned facility already. There were $1 million available to do something with it. And it was in a area of the CRA that could also leverage CRA dollars. So in my mind, the long game was that you had some things that were aligning, but then some things have happened, some things have changed. That $1 million of TDT dollars are no longer available because the project is no longer in the CRA. So it's now back to the city budget as we're trying to recoup and recover. And what I heard in the meeting that I had with some neighborhood friends from Frenchtown was that some of them didn't want a museum. Some of them wanted a fresh food market. They wanted jobs. So I'm just not real clear on, based on that meeting, I'm not real clear, and I've not seen it, but I've heard that the Neighborhood First Plan also includes a project for Ashmore, and I don't know what that is yet as well. And if I'm wrong, correct me, but if the city manager can find $1 million, I will support it, but I just wanted to put all of the facts, line them up as how things have occurred, how it started. There was available money already identified, it could be used, but that money has now been allocated in a different direction. So now what we need to do is determine what the neighborhood really wants to do with that project, and I fully support whatever it is the neighborhood wants to do with the project.
And I agree, and I think that we are all in full support of the redevelopment of Ashmore's. The other magic question is, how much does renovation actually cost? And what will be the purpose of the renovated building? Does that come out of this fiscal year? Does it come out of future fiscal year? So there's several questions that we should discuss and talk about.
Sure. And also how it will be sustained, Mr. Mayor. If a museum is contemplated, how is that going to be sustained you know, there are museums in the Frenchtown area right now that are not operable because they don't have staff. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen if that's what we decide to do as a commission. I don't know that we're in a rush to do this. I think if we take our time, identify the resources, work with the community, the neighborhood, community action council, to determine what is in fact wanted for the area, if it will be able to be sustained, then we move forward. But I don't see this as a rush, especially in light of the fact that we've got museums in the area now that are not being utilized.
Well,
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so what I would recommend is maybe we agenda an item and give the city manager direction to come up with a plan to engage the neighborhood, engage all the stakeholders of what can be done over there. And then
I second that.
There is a motion on the table to bring an agenda item back to the city commission regarding Ashmore's and moving forward, seconded by Commissioner Williams Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously, 5-0. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll come back to you.
You're it.
I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
if you have other comments.
I have some
up to you.
questions.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish up what you have
Sure.
before we move on to Commissioner Porter.
Okay, sure. So breaking down, I think that concludes my comments on the current budget amendments. And then the other things on the agenda are the Policy 218, future priorities, and the ARP. So I'm looking at some priorities that I would like for us to set for next year's budget moving forward. We've already discussed the neighborhood plans, that was on my list, the Ashmores. I'd like to make a motion for employee compensation and to have that come back. If all things considered, our finances would have been the same, and we've historically given a 3% COLA each year, and we're in the same financial position backed by the federal government for the next 4 years, it just seems like a no-brainer to me that we can make that 6% jump and make the numbers work, because that's been the historic process that we've been on. So I would make a motion that we look, give the city manager direction to identify a 6% cost of living adjustment to make up for the lack of adjustment last year.
I would second that motion for discussion.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table made by the Mayor Pro Tem to direct the city manager to bring back within the budget a 6% COLA. It's been seconded by Commissioner Williams Cox.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure,
if I may.
please.
Just add a little context to see if this is the direction. In Commissioners, when we talked prior about the budget, that certainly is the direction and intention. The resource management folks have been exploring every avenue. What I would ask for is a little flexibility as it relates to the form that compensation would take, including reduction in healthcare contribution, maybe pension reduction contribution. Those are some of the variables that they're looking at now. I don't think they have that finalized, but ultimately that does result in compensation increase. And I think that kind of broader, holistic look would be beneficial. I'd share that for your consideration in this discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I would adamantly say it needs to be a salary adjustment, because a 3% adjustment, that's compounding for the life of your career. That impacts the citizen not just for the 1 year they didn't get it, or the employee for the 1 year they didn't get it. That's 3% less they didn't get for the rest of their career. And so looking at ways we can save them 3% next year, which I think is admirable, I don't think it really goes to the underlying issue that, you know, we've been made whole by the federal government, and we should make our employees whole.
Commissioner Williams Cox.
I second the motion for discussion, because city manager and I, we've been talking about this the whole time. Because when we went through negotiations with the bargaining units, I held firm, and we all held firm, that employees didn't get raises, so no one else should be getting raises. So I know that in my conversations with the city manager, there is a commitment to make sure that employees are going to be made whole. They've been made whole in the past, and I have the full confidence that they will be made whole again. What I do not want to do is to tie his hands, because if better than 6% can be given, I want them to be able to get the better than 6%, which would include a compensation package. Having worked for the state of Florida a number of years, and we, a lot of our employees in this city are state employees who went a long time without raises, and I think that city employees will agree that they have been, treated very, in my opinion, money-wise, better than state employees have been treated. So I want to give the flexibility that if there is an opportunity to do better than that, which would include, as he just mentioned, some other benefits that would result in more money, then let's do that. I just don't want to tie his hands and then it's just a flat 6% and you don't look at anything else. Let's look at the best that we can do for our employees, because they deserve the best. Last year, the best that we could do was to make sure that everyone stayed employed and was able to work safely from home. But I know that, and what the city manager has said to me, and I'm sure he don't mind me sharing this in conversations that we've had in our briefings, is that he's going to take care of the employees. He's going to make them whole. He's told me that, and that's a quote. And we're going to hold him to that. He made that promise to me, so I'm gonna hold him to it. So I want to see what that amount comes to, because it may be greater than that. And I want him to have the flexibility to go greater if he can go greater. So.
And I would be happy to, as long as the floor is 6%, I'm happy to amend the motion to include those comments.
I can't support a motion that ties specifically at 6% or sets a floor at 6% this early on in the budget process. I mean, we are at the beginning, which will culminate with final passage at the end of September. We have not hit hurricane season. I think that I do agree that we need to provide direction to always and continuously bring back scenarios. What does 3% look like? What does 4.5% look like? Whatever the numbers are, what does 6% look like? Are there creative mechanisms to go above and beyond? But I do not feel comfortable tying our staff's hands this early on in the budget cycle. But I do think that you are hearing the message loud and clear, the direction that the commission wants to go. If the motion is amended to bring back different scenarios as we move forward through the budget process, I can support that. But if we're drawing a hard line with specific numbers right now, I'm going to respectfully have to vote against the motion on the table. Commissioner Richardson?
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that's exactly what I had in mind, and if it takes a substitute motion, I'll make that, or if it's just direction to the city manager. I'm in the same vein. I just don't see us being hard and fast at this point in the process. I think if we give the city manager direction to come back with those various scenarios, including benefits, because I can tell you, if you reduce that healthcare contribution or pension contribution, that to me is like a raise. And so I think that what we should, I'd like I said, if it takes a substitute motion, I'll do that. Or if we just give the city manager that kind of direction to bring us back the various scenarios to consider as we go forward in this budget process.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Mayor, and I'm agreeable to amend the motion as long as we include an option when it comes back for the 6% hard raise and are able to look at those dollar amounts side by side.
I am sure that will be one of the options presented.
Yes. And
Mr.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add also to that, I'm sorry. Just sitting here thinking too that a couple of things that we as a commission have done is 2 new paid holidays have also been added to the compensation package. Emancipation Day, like tomorrow. Tomorrow's an off day. You remember that, don't come to work tomorrow. And also election day is also included in that, and that too has a cost benefit to it as well. So I just wanted to mention that also.
Sure. Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to get this wrong, because I believe the next check-in would be a proposed budget. I'm looking to Robert to make sure that, I don't know that there's another step in between now and then where there would be scenarios.
Right.
It would be a proposed, right? So the process would be, we've taken the input of the commission along and including this process. We make a proposed budget. It has a certain assumptions. It's not a scenario-based assumption. It would be an assumption. And then that would, at that point, we would get the feedback from the commission based on that assumption. So I'm looking to Robert to make sure I'm anticipating the next steps right, but I believe that's where we are in the process.
You're correct with our scheduled commission meetings and workshops that July 7th would be a proposed budget.
Thank you, Robert. So, Mr. Mayor, the way the mechanics of the process would work is that with all the feedback of the commission, clearly, and Commissioner Williams-Cox, you didn't have to put words in my mouth because you know I said them, and you know that I know that our most precious asset, our greatest resource in the city of Tallahassee and the service we provide is our employees. We know that, and we've all struggled over the last year to make sure that we take care of the employees and reward them for the good work they're doing. So you know I'm committed to that, and all of my colleagues know that as well. What we also know is that the compensation package is complicated. There are various elements to it, and you can maximize the benefit to an employee through certain efforts, and so that's what we've been studying. But the next step would be for the proposed budget that I would share with the mayor and commissioners to include a recommended action. It wouldn't be a list of scenarios, it'd be a recommended action. That would be one element of it. I think that I clearly have enough direction in the priorities of the commission, and I can tell you, we are going to work with the sharpest pencil available to make sure the compensation for employees is as good as it can possibly be in compounding in future years. That is not one-time limited. So I just wanted to make sure that there was no expectation there'd be another iteration between that proposed budget.
I understand, and maybe I mixed my words a little bit, but I also understand that you will bring back a proposed recommended action at the July meeting. However, in preparation for that proposed and trying to figure out what exactly is the best compensation, I am sure y'all will run different scenarios and look at different impacts on the budget. And I do know, at least in my briefings, y'all have always done a great job of not only saying, this is the recommended action, this is how we got here. We considered this, and this was what the impact was. We considered this, and this is what the impact was. So you are absolutely correct. There will not be different scenarios that will be brought back, and if I misspoke, I apologize. However, I would still love to know your thought process as you come up with the recommended action for July, and I'm sure my colleagues would too, of we considered this in this package, and this is what the impact was, but we have recommended this particular package because we think that this is the greatest package that we could have. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, so, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, it is your motion. Are you willing to?
I'll withdraw the motion. I think we've provided adequate direction. I think the city manager knows where we stand.
Excellent.
And we can move on. The next issue, in the same vein, the citizens of Florida have decided it's time to transition to a $15 minimum wage. And we've had this conversation in the past. We got to 12. I don't think we got our seasonal employees to 12. So I'm just asking the city manager, when I'm looking at the labor market right now, it's tight. You know, we're seeing it all across our community of especially filling these lower wage positions. So I just wanted to kick that over to you. I know the ballot amendment gave us a few years to get there, but I'm wondering how quickly, both for retaining employees and recruiting new employees to some of these positions, that we can start offering a $15 minimum wage to all employees.
Mr. Banger.
Robert might be able to answer this better than me, but that is contemplated in this year's budget to move in that direction. And forgive me, I don't remember the amount, but there is an expected stair step from 12 to and forgive me, I don't remember the number, Robert, what y'all have included in your math. If you know it, please share it with us.
I think we were at 13 based on the guidance for the timing, but certainly.
So tentatively for next year's budget, proposed budget, it would include a move from $12 to $13 an hour, consistent with the overall direction of a $15 an hour minimum wage. What you hear is, this is like a puzzle that all has to fit together, and Robert and his team are trying to fit it together, and so there's some scenarios and evaluation that's happening. So that's not written in stone. That would happen in the proposed budget to fit it all together. But that is the direction. We have experienced some labor shortage constraint, I think, like the rest of the world, the region, of course, some of our frontline staff. I will say that our lifeguards, we have had a very difficult time recruiting lifeguards this summer. And, within the discretion of the department director, that pay was increased. I don't know how much it was increased to try to attract more. So I think we find ourselves very much in the same position with other providers, service providers, where either seasonal help or part-time help is difficult to attract. So that does push us to make sure that we can attract those and we pay more. Not the same, but similar. We have implemented, with the city commission's approval, a signing bonus for our police officers. I think that would be kind of that same vein where there is an acknowledgement, there's a market impact in the need to be creative in the recruitment. So we are certainly methodically moving to a higher wage to comport with at least a $15 minimum wage. Once the market sets at $15, I think we probably will have to be higher than that. And that is for a lot of our frontline positions. So that's the movement. We would include that in the proposed budget. And then as we speak, for those jobs that are more difficult to fill at the moment, we're taking action as necessary.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the July proposed budget will include our next steps in the multi-year process of making it $15.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Williams-Cox, and then we'll come back to you, Mayor Pro Tem.
because I know that our staff can do anything, I want to appeal to us to, let's go beyond the next step. Let's go to 15. Let's see what it looks like. I mean, it's a proposed budget. We hadn't agreed to it. Let's just see what 15 looks like. See, City of Tallahassee, we lead. We lead where we go. And what we want to do is we want to send a message. We sent a message by having Emancipation Day be a paid holiday. We send a message by making sure Election Day is a holiday. We've done a number of things that we are asking the rest of the state to follow us. So let's go ahead and go bold into that new world, and let's see what $15 an hour looks like for every employee. It's so that if we can do it without a degradation of services, then we've done it. We don't have to keep holding our breath every year trying to figure out, are we going to get there, are we going to get there? So if we've gone from 12 to 13, then let's go on to 15 and let's see what it looks like. We're just looking at numbers. We haven't committed. We're just looking at numbers, and I think we can do it. Cut my commission office budget a little bit, if that helps. We haven't used it in this past year anyway. We hadn't been able to travel to do anything. Take it from wherever you need to take it from. All I've had to do was buy some, pay for my cell phone so people can reach me and get some office supplies. But we need to see what it looks like. What bothers me is I can't manage with the wondering what's going to happen over the mountain. Tell me what's over the mountain, and then we can deal with how fast can we go to the mountain. So let's go ahead, let's just do it and see what it looks like. Because seasonal employees, temporary employees, all employees help make this city what it is. And I know that if we do this, the money is gonna come back because it's gonna be spent locally. And we're gonna get it back. So let's just see let's just go and see what it looks like. Hit the gas.
So, Mr. Manager, I think that you're hearing the direction is that we would like to see the proposal and how it would impact the budget, $15 an hour in July.
May I add something that,
Please,
Mr. Mayor?
please.
In the most challenging issues, I want to be real clear on this because I think we'd be remiss if we just simply raise the bar to $15. That's not a workable solution because we increase compensation compression. So I think in what we would share would try to deal with that compression. We have employees making $15 an hour now or $15.25 an hour now. As we move others to 15, we need to move them too. I don't think you can just simply, so I'm sharing this for consideration, I don't think you can just simply move the bar to 15. That's part of the complexity of it. You've got to deal a little bit with that compression that you create for employees. So that would be, as we bring something back, I think we have to address that. That would be part of our consideration.
Okay, and I'm fine with, do whatever you need to do. See, I know the state of Florida does not give you a good model to work from, but the state of Florida says that if someone is making this amount, then this is what their bonus or their increase would be. So the people who are making above that don't expect, because it's been told that if you are, for instance, if you're already making $15 an hour, you're where you need to be. We're trying to bring others up to that. So, you know, I'm not belaboring the point. I know you hear me loud and clear, and we'll talk further in our private conversations. And so I can help you understand, and you can help me understand. But I know you have to do some things, and I don't want to come do what y'all do, but do your thing. But do it with $15, and let's see what it looks like.
Back to Commissioner Mettler.
I heard that loud and clear. Do we need a motion for that direction?
I would like a motion, yes, sir.
Sure, then.
And I believe I can just move the bar to $15, and so I think it would be good to have a motion.
All right.
Okay, sure.
Motion on the table made by Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. You have afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 1 o'clock on July 7th. It is time for our regularly scheduled budget workshop. It's good to see everybody. I believe that Commissioner Porter will be participating via WebEx. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do we have Commissioner Porter on the line? I see her name.
Can y'all hear me?
We can. Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Porter. All right, let us move right into the agenda item. First of all, do we have any modifications for the workshop today?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, are we going to, should we have the presentation first and then take public comment?
I would recommend so, yes, sir.
That'd be great. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Manager.
And I'll just hand it to Robert Wiggin, our Director of Resource Management. We've got 2 hours allotted for this workshop. I think we've got about a 20-minute presentation and then public comment, and commissioner feedback. So I won't belabor it and pass it to Robert.
Thank you, City Commissioners, Mayor, appointed officials, and Reese. I'll make sure the technology works. I'm sharing this screen, so there we go. I can advance it now. Moving quickly through the kind of the overview of the budget. We've got a $758.3 million operating budget. The proposed general fund within that operating budget is $171.2 million, maintaining the millage rate for the 6th year in a row at 4.1 mils. We'll ask you to affirm that assumption later in the workshop. And then the capital budget is a $273 million fiscal year 22 recommendation for appropriation. That is a $1.03 billion budget. It's a large number. It's an impactful number, but we believe that with your leadership, with the strategic plan direction, that is headed in the right direction. So there's some areas that we'd like to focus on. I will say that in this last year, we're very proud that we've been designated Gold Lead City. I think would be
Yes.
remiss if we don't recognize that our fiscal year '21 budget and previous budgets brought us to that level. We received the APPA Top System Award for our electric utility. Water Quality Award meets the strict standards of EPA, DEP, and Florida Department of Health. We continue to be recognized for our financial acumen and our financial performance. Performance management recognition as with certifications of achievement, and our CAFR is recognized in addition to that. So again, I think 1.3 sounds like 1.03 billion sounds like a large budget. It is, but it's been a successful previous year in entering this next year. So we're entering the third year of a 5-year strategic plan. While we've accomplished much, today's workshop will focus on fiscal year '22 proposed budget. Continues our successful work in utilities and public safety in a wide variety of ways that our workforce serves the community. To continue to make this progress, we're going to talk about workforce compensation and new positions, neighborhood revitalization and relief. I'll ask Amy to speak to the fiscal year '22 operating and capital budget, and then I'll ask Max to talk about some critical elements in the operating and capital budget, our reserve status, disaster cost recovery with FEMA, fire services, and then our progress in a water and wastewater rate study. At the conclusion of the workshop, we recommend adoption of a 4.1 millage rate, some authorizations for the city manager or designee to enter into contracts to implement the American Rescue Plan, and then also an opportunity to enter into an agreement with Motorola for replacement of radios in the near future. As you well know, we have reached agreements in our collective bargaining units with the PBA and with the International Association of Firefighters, and those have been ratified by all parties for fiscal year '21 through '23. Our fiscal year '22 budget represents those pay increases and those agreements. So that's one portion of our workforce. The balance of our workforce is 2,200 full-time positions, 1,100 temporary positions, and another 170 other personnel services employees that we refer to as OPS employees. Again, as you're very familiar, the fiscal year '20, Floridians voted to increase the state's minimum wage from $8.56 an hour to $10 an hour, effective July 1st, and it'll increase by $1 per hour, reaching $15 by 2026, after which it'll continue to rise by inflation. This pay plan recognizes that we've had difficulty in hiring. Our lifeguards have required special attention. We've had to look at various departments to ensure that they maintain staffing levels. And the city needs to maintain our status as an employer of choice, of first choice. So it's very important that we focus on our compensation package. Moving on to our compensation recommendation. I identified full-time employees, temporary, and OPS, but I will say that there are probably thousands of classifications. Each of the 14 operating funds operates very uniquely, and so it requires specialized training, skills, and personnel. And I believe what we've presented here considers the market conditions, balances it against financial viability, and then ensures that we meet strategic planning success expectations. Our recommendation is that for all permanent general plan employees, the fiscal year '22 budget recommends a salary and benefits package focused on those making $15 to $25 per hour. That represents 1,600 of the 2,200 employees. The pay plan continues efforts to increase take-home pay for employees, and the recommended pay plan specifically recommends a 4.5% across-the-board pay increase with a guaranteed minimum of $2,500 salary increase for anyone earning less than $55,555. That's at your direction to ensure that those at the lowest wage base earn at least a minimum salary. It's consistent with our $1,000 minimum salary raises in the past. In fiscal year '21, you gave us direction that healthcare should be, the cost sharing for healthcare should be adjusted over time to increase take-home pay. We also implemented a leave buyback in fiscal year '22. In recognition of changes in the healthcare market, we are recommending a 9% increase in employee flex bucks, which equates to $177 more annually in each employee's paycheck. It allows them to make healthcare choices when they're signing up for benefits. And that's on top of the current FlexBucks numbers. As I mentioned, the employee healthcare insurance costs for families are being shifted from a 70-30 cost-sharing split where the city pays 70%, the employee pays 30%. We're now in the second year of shifting that to an 80-20 split, and nearly there in its entirety this year. And that will realize a reduction of $976 in employee health care costs for employees with a family coverage, and on average for an employee plus one of $500. The chart to your right demonstrates this pay plan with a few pay scales. If you look at the pay types of a raise, flex pay, family health care savings, and then a take-home increase and total percent increase. In 1,100 employees that make $15 an hour, it averages out to an 11% raise, 11.7% raise. For about 525 of our employees that make just at $25 an hour, it's about a 7% raise or increase in take-home pay. And at $35 an hour, we're looking at an increase of 6.1% across the board. And those are $31,000, $52,000, and $72,000 in salary categories. This pay plan addresses larger market forces, addresses equity, it addresses compression, and ensures our greatest resource that our people make gains over time in their salaries. I will mention also that these are consistent with TPD and firefighters for across the board and healthcare and flex benefits, as well as some of the other benefits that are specific to those union contract negotiations. Another aspect, besides our full-time employees, we are making a recommendation to move 57 other personnel service employees into full-time positions. Many of the departments have a transitional plan where they bring somebody in as on a part-time basis. That person then has the opportunity to work that 20 hours, gain some experience as they move forward and work more towards a full-time schedule, 40 hours a week. We have the opportunity to move them into an OPS position, which after 6 months means that they're earning health care also. The benefit of that is that over time they're able to get training, they're able to get certifications, they're able to get vehicle driver license classifications, and then move into a permanent position. What we're experiencing is we have low turnover. And so what we expected as these folks transitioned over time into these full-time positions is there weren't vacancies available. And so thus the recommendation to move 57 positions into a full-time position. We've spent 5 years holding the line on positions, not making changes in our total position count, moving folks among departments where there was need. We feel like to maintain the service levels in community beautification, in Star Metro, and customer services, and Parks and Recreation, that it makes sense to move these positions into full-time positions. It does require some budget capacity, and that will budget for matched annuity plan and flex bucks in 2022, and then also have to incur pension costs in 2023. I will mention, as we've talked about this, moving positions into full-time positions, it's come to our attention that we need to add a Parks and Rec amphitheater position, a tennis operations position, And then we've talked to the city attorney about a difficulty in hiring a paralegal that's on a temporary basis and the potential for moving that to a full-time position to assist the police department. So that we present that for your consideration. Another aspect of our employment is our full-time employees, our OPS employees, and our temporary employees. I mentioned the minimum wage constitutional amendment. I mentioned market pressures. I mentioned that we have unique operations and financial constraints in our 14 operating funds. We've got career positions in accounting and line workers and engineers and large equipment operators and mechanics, but we also then fill any gaps with temporary employees. We employ about 1,100 employees for less than 20 hours a week. It's specific to the calendar and program that they're working in, and then 800 alone are in Parks and Recreation, so in our general fund. So there are key positions there. As an example, when I talk about some of the departments and their specific operations, each fund follows the best path for retention, retaining, and addressing employee needs. Golf came to our attention as an example of one where they rely upon Department of Correction employees full-time to gain experience in the work, take resume, financial classes, but also gainful employment over a full workday. At the same time, then we supplement those Department of Correction workers with temporary workers. And they range from college students to retirees or city employees who choose a secondary employment. Some of the work that they do is, after the Department of Correction personnel mow greens and do the course setup, they check in golfers, they're a starter, they're make sure the pace of play is working, they collect carts, they recharge carts, and so the tasks fit the needs at the golf course for constant work, but also meet the requirements of the employees who can't be there for the full day. They want the flexibility of being able to go to college, come in, earn some money for books and or living expenses, and then and the hours are flexible, and that they can increase or decrease the hours depending upon what their workload is in school, or in the case of some of the retirees or secondary employment, it supplements their income. I would expect there might be a position for me as I retire to keep myself connected to the golf course. She sees me out there often on the weekends.
Lawn care.
Ultimately, I would love to pick up golf balls on the driving range. So ultimately, this budget recommends $10 per hour for our umpires, for our scorekeepers, for our concessions personnel, for our cashiering personnel. We've got TIFLA in those temporary positions, summer camp counselors, and all temp employees. And of course, as the minimum wage moves through its constitutional amendment stages, we will move those temporary employees also through that progress on that program. So those recommendations we feel are fair. They consider equity and balance. It's a balance between full-time employees and what they make, part-time employees and what they make, OPS employees and where we want them to move into permanent roles, and then our temporary workers. As equal as that consideration is, we've been able to talk as another focus of the budget on May 19th, the American Rescue Plan, where we discussed our implementation to recognize the needs in our neighborhoods. We want to make sure that we're supporting public health response with $1.6 million. We're addressing negative economic impacts with $16.4 million. And as you're well aware, we're doing that in our homeless shelters, in partnerships with our homeless shelters, with incentives for affordable housing projects, down payment assistance programs, neighborhood resilience programs. This is consistent with city and county working together to implement these programs, and is part of the authorization that we're asking for the city manager to enter into those contracts now and in fiscal year 22. Some further detail on housing and human services and community resilience. The fiscal year 22 budget, when we talk about the $16.4 million, it is layered throughout our grant programs, our housing and community resilience, our home, CHSP, CDBG, SHIP, home, and the energy services grants for a total operating and grant fund.
When it comes to reserves, the city follows national best practices and maintains appropriate reserves for its operating funds. This includes the Deficiencies Fund, which of course supports the general fund. The policy target for the Deficiencies Fund is currently $26.9 million, which is based on 2 months of operating expenses and allows for the city to be able to respond to emergency events or unforeseen events. In recent years, the Deficiencies Fund has been used to support emergency response activities for storms as well as COVID-19 response. And as such, the current balance is below the policy target and is expected to end the year at approximately $20.6 million. Earlier this year, a plan was presented to restore the Deficiencies Fund over the course of several years through the use of one-time reserves. These one-time reserves are expected to come from future real estate sales, as well as additional federal reimbursement for past storms and COVID-19 response. And so speaking of federal reimbursements, as we all know, since 2016, the city of Tallahassee has been impacted by 3 major hurricanes, hopefully, or now that we know, not a 4th, thankfully. So we've claimed nearly $50 million, or have requested nearly $50 million in reimbursement from FEMA and the state of Florida. For all 3 storms, approximately $8.2 million in additional reimbursement is still due. So this is after taking into account the local cost share of those requests. Staff will continue to work with FEMA and the state of Florida to seek the rest of those dollars, as well as any available funding that we can receive for ongoing COVID-19 recovery.
Commissioners, we appreciate your clear direction in the strategic plan to guide us, your leadership and acceptance of assumptions that we've made as we've gone through our fiscal year 21 analysis and our establishing assumptions for the fiscal year 22 budget and 5 prior budget meetings. The proposed budget for fiscal year 22 addresses workforce, neighborhoods, sound operating and financial standing, and then also we've included some of the procedural steps that we will go through as we go through the today's workshop and the next 2 public hearing meetings. We're asking for 2 authorizations today, your vote on the millage rate, and then also awareness of some of the next steps that we'll take. On slide 20, we're asking that you authorize the city manager to expend coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. I frequently refer to it as the American Relief or Rescue Plan intermittently, but once it passed into legislation and implementation for the Treasury, it gained a new name. So we'll start to reference it as the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. Not as easy as our, but
That's a mouthful, though.
it is.
Name way longer.
And CRISPA doesn't make sense. Anyway, as the plan was adopted, as you reviewed and approved of the plan May 19th, we'll begin to enter into sub-grant agreements with fund recipients, and we'll ask for that authorization today.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to commend staff for the work that they have done putting this budget together. As the dean of the commission and having been here for 6 years now, I can tell you this is probably one of the best, if not the best, budget presentations I've sat through, and reflects the clear direction of this commission in serving the community. I am just delighted, if I can use that term, for what we're doing for our city employees and showing the gratitude that we have for them and the work that they do, even during conditions like what we're experiencing now. Today is my neighborhood's pickup day for trash and garbage and recycling, and they're right there, doing the job that they do best. And so this budget shows them how much we appreciate the work that you all do and how we want to fairly compensate you for that. The commission gave you that direction, and we were able to accomplish that. And I would say without a tax increase, maintaining for the 6th year now our millage at 4.1. We all should be proud of that because we're able to provide quality services for the citizens of Tallahassee without a tax increase over 6 years now. That's pretty phenomenal. And I hope that our community appreciates its city government for that. And so, again, I just want to thank you all, Mr. Manager. I want to thank you for the leadership that you have provided, your leadership team, Deputy City Manager Barber, the Assistant City Managers and staff for the work that you all have done. This is phenomenal. And I hope that, you know, our local media will broadcast this to the community so that they will know how wonderfully run this city is at this point and how they can be proud of what their city government is doing for them on a daily basis. So again, thank you all so much, and we appreciate the work that you've done in putting together this budget for fiscal year 2022. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion in there as well, Commissioner?
There is a motion that we adopt staff recommendation on option number 1.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved for staff recommendation on option number, and that would include 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1E, which is the recommendation, correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
It's been properly seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Williams-Cox for comment?
Yes, I also want to say thank you to the team for, one, making it to me very clear that you heard what we had to say. We wanted our employees to be rewarded, awarded for sticking it out with us through COVID and being able to not only stick it out with us, but as I always say, loyalty is one thing, but when you get to Winn-Dixie or Publix, you better have something else. And what we're seeing here is that our employees will take home more. And as at the last budget meeting, I asked to let's take a look at what $15 an hour for each employee, what it looks like. And thank you for bringing back what it looks like, because I didn't say without raising taxes, but you already knew that. That was part of it. Because you could have brought it back with everybody, you know, making 15, doing whatever, but you knew that the cap was, or the ceiling was, you couldn't go beyond the millage, because I wasn't on the commission when that was attempted some years ago, but I was in the audience, and let me tell you, it got ugly. It got real ugly. Yeah. I was praying for you because you were there, right? That's why you get to be the dean, because you survived it. But I want to thank you for knowing that we needed to keep it there. And I'm appreciative, as I mentioned at the last budget meeting, coming from my experience comes from the state of Florida. And to my knowledge, the state of Florida has never given like a $2,500 salary increase to bring anybody up anywhere. And so I think that was very good. And the flex bucks and the holding back healthcare. Healthcare is so important in these days and times. And until the state of Florida does something about expanding Medicaid and having more people being covered, this is like gold, having good healthcare. And so we appreciate that. And I'm looking at the bottom line of what the percentage increases were, and seeing how it was methodically thought out so that those who had less will get more, and those who have more will get less, I think was an equitable way to deal with it. So thank you to all of you, the whole team. Thank you, city manager, because we can't touch you guys, but we can touch the city manager, and he heard us, and the deputy city manager, for making sure that we were all heard, the city manager, deputy city manager, and for the work that you all did to put this together. I am also pleased that the number of positions that are being moved from OPS to permanent, that is also life-altering for families, because when you're OPS, you're, the state of Florida use that term OPS, is other people's services, and they say other personal services, but we used to call it other people's services, because you served at the pleasure of other people, and if they decided, not to be there, for you not to be there, then that changed, but in a permanent position, that provides a level of security for employees. And we're hoping that this trend will continue as people are working like full-time folks, that they will also receive that status. The temporary folks, I know that when I was talking to the city manager about how to look at this, we're looking at college students, we're looking at folks who, this is like a second job for them kind of thing. And so I understand why we're not at 15 yet, but I do know that we're going to strive to get there because we have to, constitutionally, we have to. And I'm glad to see that we're moving along. So we're moving to 10, and we will continue to watch us move towards 15. And I think I saw that somewhere in fiscal year 26, I think is what is anticipated. So I hope to be around. I'm going to hold you to it. Whether I'm around or not, we're going to hold you to it. I'll put it in my will. And make sure that it happens. Also for our community partners. I see you out here in the audience, and thank you for what you do. And we know you need money to do it. And so we're trying to do what we can within the millage that we had to hold to. So hopefully we'll get some help for you from across the street. Both places across the street, the legislature and the county, will help us land all those things. So all of those things, I think we've done a tremendous job in trying to keep our city growing and keep our city moving and retain our employees who we value. We value each and every one of you. So no matter what the category is, we value you. And I also want to offer, as I come to a close, for the temporary employees, if you're seeking a career, this is an opportunity to apply for positions with that path. If your situation has changed, you're no longer in college, your finances, whatever has changed, apply for some of those full-time positions and compete for them, and hopefully you will be successful in getting them, bringing the experience that you've already earned. So again, thank you all so very, very much, each and every one of you. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Robert and company, for what you prepared so far. Good work, I think, on a lot of the employee compensation. The only thing I still think we need to strive for this year is to go ahead and raise the minimum wage for all employees to $15 an hour. Minimum means minimum. That should just be the base. And I know we can talk about temporary employees and part-time employees, but I don't know anybody who comes to work for fun. They come to work because they need to get paid, they want to get paid. We can talk about retirees, high school students, college students, rents going up on retirees, rents going up on college students, and I've had the pleasure of employing multiple TFLA high school kids over the past few years, and I tell you, they need that money just as much as anybody else. A lot of these kids, I mean, they're helping their parents put groceries on the table. They're helping mom pay the utility bill. This isn't just fun money to go to the movies after school. Not everybody comes from a background where they have parents that can help them pick up the slack. Many kids are actually helping their parents. So when I look at the overall impact presented of $1.7 million of the general fund to get us there, we're looking at 1% of our budget. 1%, we can be a real leader in this community of setting the floor at $15 an hour. Some of them may want to transition into full-time employment in the future, but they're going to work every day because they need to get paid, and the cost of living continues to increase. So if we want to be the city that is really setting the standard for what wages look like in our community, we don't need to wait for Amazon and other big companies to come here to do it. We can do it right here in our government. So respectfully, I would request that we continue the conversation of raising the minimum wage for all employees to $15 an hour.
Commissioner Porter, are you with us for comments? Any comments?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I want to echo what's been said about just this. The presentation was really helpful and all the attachments. I had a few questions. So there were some comments about the deficiencies fund. I know we're about, what is it, $6 to $8 million short of where we'd like to be per our policies. And I thought I heard it said that it's something that we're going to be working on recouping over the next couple of years. I guess my question is, if we approve the sale of properties later today for that $8 million, will that bring us to, the level we want to be at?
Robert?
I expect that you're referencing the Chevron and St. John's property.
Yes.
If I recall the details of the agenda item correctly, the sale ultimately may reach closure in fiscal year '23 for the first parcel. The second parcel may reach closure of the sale in fiscal year '24. I think as we proceed through '22, '23, '24, we'll assess how much of the FEMA money is available and returned to us, and then portions of those sales, yes, would depending upon what level we are at for the deficiencies fund, relative to the general fund, again, trying to identify 2/12 of a percent of the total general fund, then that would bring us very close to fully funded the deficiencies fund, yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Okay, thank you. My other comments were just, I really did appreciate the breakdown, the non-career versus career employments. I agree with Commissioner Matlow. I would like to continue this conversation, and I would maybe have liked to see some more options for us here. But I did appreciate the breakdown, and it did make sense to me. My final comment.
Commissioner Porter?
Okay. Thank you, Reese. And, I'm prepared to move forward. The only thing is I just want to reiterate my commitment to seeing us get all employees to 15 an hour as soon as possible. So I hope that we can continue that conversation. Thank you.
The issue, and I also wanted to mention the deficiencies fund as well, as Commissioner Porter mentioned. I do have some concerns there, but I know we have a plan for addressing that. And as long as we stay on course for addressing that deficiencies fund over the next few years, then I'm comfortable with that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Commissioner Richardson, just,
Mr. Cook, you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Mayor. I do, one, I want to make a quick comment on the deficiencies fund, but before I do, I heard more than one of you say you appreciate staff hearing you. We always hear you. I want to compliment Robert and his team for what they've done, because we hear you. Sometimes the request is a heavy lift. And at the last budget workshop, I thought you put a challenge in front, whether you knew it or not, and to be able to creatively address compensation. So a year ago, you said, we can't afford to give anybody a raise, but we're not letting anybody go. That was a big signal for employees. I get to keep my job. And then at your last workshop, you said, we want to address the compensation and do so immediately, and to be able to respond like they have with some focus, as was presented, deserves commendation. And so I appreciate the work they did, and I'm sure the employees will as well. The other thing on the deficiencies fund, I think it's important there, as Commissioner Richardson said, we'll be paying attention to it over the next couple of years. If you go deep into I think there's an attachment to the agenda item, not the presentation, but the agenda item that talks about the deficiencies fund, and it has a chart that goes back to 2008. So at the end of the good times, just before the financial crisis hit us, the target and the balance were identical. And you'll see the target just incrementally goes up because it's a percentage of our budget, but the balance dropped because we needed it, because of the difficult financial times we were in. and it went back up, and the balance reached the target. And now it's down a little bit below, but we've demonstrated you as a commission and your predecessors have said consistently that that's important, and so the staff knows that you plan proactively. You can't address it all in one year, whether it goes up or down. So I think the property sales and the other things that have been talked about, we've done this before, so I think the public can rest assured that we'll do it again, but I think you're very right on point to identify the issue.
Thank you. Motion's been made. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Passes unanimously 5-0. Do we have any other business to come before us at the workshop?